What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp, Fightful, here with the name you know once again. A man who I feel like I owe a lot to, all that you've done for Kentucky wrestling in general.
I appreciate that.
I can't understate how much you've done for Kentucky wrestling, especially. But we got Larry D here. Larry, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I really appreciate that, and I get that a lot for. Thank you for what you've done for pro wrestling, but all I've done is just enjoy my time in pro wrestling. So thank you, though. I'm glad to be here.
Well, one of the reasons we're here is because, at least as it appears, your in-ring time is coming to a close. I believe it's November 4th in Cynthiana.
November the 4th, we'll be wrapping it up, and my in-ring career will come to an end, but I feel like it starts the beginning of something new with Generation Next Pro Wrestling. And the vision that we have for it and everything that's moving forward, I'm really excited for.
So tell me what went into this decision, because I remember the first time I interviewed you was 2019, which is a completely different world in a lot of ways than what we know now. And at that time, you were working full-time, and I don't just mean in the ring. I mean, like, in general, and then still wrestling like 300 times a year.
Yeah, man, I was wrestling Sunday through Sunday at sometimes, and I finally got the opportunity with Impact Wrestling to make it a full-time job, and not a lot of people get to do that, even on that level. But, it gave me the free time to open up, be an entrepreneur. I opened a bar, I have a construction company. But a lot's happened since. I had my house fire in March the 4th. My father developed cancer. He passed away this past June. And just a lot on my plate. But the biggest thing with this decision is that watching my kids fulfill their dreams, and they've been in professional wrestling their entire lives. I've only been in it 22 years, so I could imagine what goes on in their minds, and just watching them grow into their own, watch them become their own adults. And my son has really embraced the sports. He loves football. He's made the basketball team, and I have a multi-athlete in my house. So I just want to be able to give him the same respect and watch him chase his dreams and the girls chase their dreams as they've watched me.
So initially, like, what are your feelings? What are your emotions? How is that conversation with your family? Because I'm sure that pretty well what they know is dad, husband being on the road, if not even on the road, coming home from work and then getting on the road, coming back that night. That's the life they know right now.
Yeah, that is. And that's the selfish part of pro wrestling that it makes you. And it's a selfish, unselfish thing, I always like to say. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten in the car, say to Dayton, Ohio, and specifically get off work at 3 o'clock, back on the road at 3:45. I can't tell you how many times I would just cry my eyes out, feeling so selfish of like, man, you're on your way to another wrestling show, and you could be there with your children, but it paid off. I had this voice in my head saying, keep going. There's something bigger at the end. And it was, so it allowed me more time with them now. And if anything else, I get to hear them say, they can chase their dreams, and they could take things what's in their dreams and make it a reality at 11, 12, 13 years old. It's good to hear that.
In wrestling, it's always never say never, right? Right. All the time.
Right.
And, I mean, I've seen your recent work. It's very clear. It's not an in-ring thing that's keeping you from doing it. You probably feel like it's time because the in-ring is still there. You're
right.
You're in great shape, in better shape than when I first met you 4 years ago.
I feel like the never say never is always there. And I can't say that if the right creative from the next level were to come about, it's just, I feel like I need to focus more on my home life, and yes, the dream of professional wrestling's there, but I'm gonna be 40 years old, and I feel like I'm still one of the best that can do just about anything in the ring still. But I feel like my attention needs to be somewhere else. But who's to say if the right creative came along and Billy Corgan or Scott D'Amore were to say, hey, here's this, instead of just showing up and being another guy, if something besides showing up being another guy was on the table, I would consider it. But right now I'm content doing what I'm doing. I'm content knowing that November the 4th with Moose, if it's my last one, then so be it, because I'm just happy with what the last 22 years has given me, because there's no way I'd imagine at 8, 9 years old that I would be able to say, hey, I'm a professional wrestler and I don't have to clock in anywhere.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Moose. I've interviewed him number of times as well. Somebody I'm sure you got to know in Impact Wrestling. A fixture there as well. what went into the decision for that as well? Because I mean, this is one of the top opponents you could be facing out at,
Well, originally, we were set to face against Trevor Murdoch, and the NWA tapings came about on November the 4th, which I understand. I've been in that position many times myself, that I've had to pull off certain events. But I've always wanted to wrestle Trevor Murdoch. I've always wanted to wrestle Moose, and I've always wanted to wrestle Josh Alexander. So when Moose was on the table and Moose was available, then we jumped right on that, because I feel that's the style of wrestling that I want to bring to Kentucky. That's the type of wrestling, and this is with all due respect to all the promotions in the state, but I don't want to just run wrestling. I feel like for the longest time we ran like carny type wrestling, and the fans of Kentucky deserve so much more from the sport of pro wrestling, that I feel that myself and Max Sled collectively can bring a really good product to the people that's well worth the money that you're going to spend.
So that's also something I want to talk about. I mean, in addition to being in the ring, I mean, you promoted events for quite a long time. I'll never forget. We didn't know it then, but I remember when I came and interviewed you, I came and interviewed Chris as well. Chris had to step in and do a seminar because Tracy Smothers very uncharacteristically couldn't show up. We now know, unfortunately, why he missed that. He was getting diagnosed and passed away. But I think that's a good example of two of the people that you've worked with, and the person you're facing in Moose, when you got a guy like Chris who's been anywhere and everywhere, a guy like Tracy who always wanted to help people so much. And now, I mean, you've been promoting events for so long. You've helped countless people that I've heard of. How important is that to you to prepare the next generation, which is very much in the name?
Right. I feel like it's very important, because it was such a long road for me to learn. I didn't choose the path of others. I was out many nights. I chose the hard way. It's just the way that my dad had raised me. But hard work, dedication pays off, and that's just the way that I've been raised and how I always feel. And that's kind of what we have there. And I feel that it's time to take everything that I have gotten the opportunity to learn over the last 22 years and pass along. And hopefully it doesn't take 12 to 15 years to reach the next level like it did for me, and I can get them there in 3 to 5 with the help of Max Sled. We have a great thing over there, man. I'm really impressed with it.
Yeah, and I do think this is important for Kentucky wrestling, because I'm glad OVW got the Netflix show and all that, but there does need to be different styles, different methods, all that type of stuff, because I feel like Kentucky can be a hotbed. I mean, of course, you see how often WWE and AEW come to Lexington, Louisville, Corbin, even the Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area. And when they couldn't, because their TV couldn't, have blood on it or anything, they're like, well, we're just going to run every single border town because we got to get these fans.
Right. And now I think that the state of Kentucky's actually picked up on that too, because you can bleed a little bit in Kentucky now. They're a little bit more lax. And I know that a lot of people give grief to the athletic commission.
I do all the time, buddy.
But man, really and truly, it's kind of like, we're supposed to wear a seatbelt. If we don't get caught wearing a seatbelt, we kind of know. But I mean, it has its pros, it has its cons, but all in all,
my
it's okay.
issue is the way that they do it is it'd be like if you gave somebody their driver's license before they drove.
Oh, yeah, I understand that. Now, if you're talking on that, I feel that there needs to be a training license.
Yes.
If you're going to have a training license. But the problem that we face in Kentucky now, in my opinion, is that you have underqualified teachers. Because, there's no sense of like, well, what makes you qualified to teach someone not to break their neck or kill their opponent in the ring. So I would like to speak with the athletic commission, if ever the chance were about. I would love to go down there and say, hey, here's how I would see it. Here's how, from the time that I was 16 years old until I'll be 40 in January, here's how I see it. You don't have to do it this way, but I feel like I would have some pretty good advice as to make the state better and what we could do in the wrestling side of things.
I remember when I was training, I was about to take that first bump, and they're like, "You licensed?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." And that's why I ended up training in Ohio a lot. And then I found out that effectively, like, say my wife were to go take a bump, she would have to go get licensed. But then when getting licensed to take that first bump, she would have the same rights as like Randy Orton, who got licensed 20 plus years ago. And I was like, that seems a little like backwards to me. And I think there are several measures they can take, and especially with reputable people like yourself and in OVW, But seeing the MMA side of it too, because I manage MMA fighters, I would constantly hear them say, "Oh, well, wrestling and MMA are just the same," and I'm like, "No, they're not.
No.
They're not. They're not. It's not the same. You're working with and against each other here. There's a lot of elements there I think they could rectify."
I think the problem is, and this is with all due respect again, is that we have, Jimmy from down the street whose uncle used to be in the business, and now all of a sudden he's a wrestler on Saturday night because he can bring X amount of people in. But the product, I feel, at the end of the day suffers. Wrestling in general suffers when you don't have the proper people in line to teach the next generation. And that's what we pride ourselves on when I was at Impact Wrestling, and Max and the crew will tell you, is I used to come back from TV and I would immediately pass along anything that I picked up, because I know that there's a short window for these people, for these guys and girls to get there, and I wanted to share it right away. And I mean, we even done a cinematic match, when I did. Yeah, it was so fun. And you can go back on our little Gen X TV there, and you'll see that we put together our own cinematic match. And I would have not been able to do any of that had it not been involved with Impact Wrestling. And I just want to share my knowledge.
Let's talk about that a little bit. I remember when I saw the video, Scott D'Amore, you were told, hey, you're coming over to Impact. I've interviewed you since at your bar about how, things didn't go quite the way that you wanted, but I mean, still, that's a great opportunity, great moment.
I had a blast. It was fun, yeah.
And I mean, especially for the knowledge that you are continuing to share with others, that's got to be incredibly valuable, because I mean, you're working a television property that's been on the air for over 20 years.
Of course, and it's such an honor to be a part of it in any aspect. And I really enjoyed like the Wrestle House side of things. I really enjoyed what Impact allowed me to do. Is it allowed me to show my range. I got to be Big Bad Larry D, and then I got to be Lover Suave Lawrence D, but also got the chance to prove I could be Badlands Bart down in a good old, bull rope match in Louisville, Kentucky. And I don't think Impact Wrestling crapped on me or anything like that. I just think that the timing wasn't right and the creative just wasn't there for me at the time. And it's hard to say what we could have done, but I know that I could hang with any of them guys and girls in that ring for sure.
And I know you popped up there again. It seems like the relationship is good.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, I asked my release, and then 3 weeks later I accepted another TV from them,
you told me you would be open to do. Like when we did that interview, you're like, listen, if it makes sense and I'm open on the day, it's not like I hate them or anything.
I got the most creative when I was not signed from them than when I did. It's a good time though. I mean, I really enjoyed my time down there, and it taught me how to be a professional wrestler. And I got to thank Chris Harris, Wildcat Chris Harris, who was really, really excited for my time there. And we would talk every week. It seemed like 2 or 3 times, and he was just so happy for me. And our friendship becomes such a better, closer. I've known him for years, but I consider him my true closest friends now.
I met him for the first time last year at WrestleCade, because he was there at a booth with James Storm. James Storm, Titans fan.
Right.
Me and Chris Harris, Bengals fans.
Oh, boy.
The Titans-Bengals game was on. Bengals win with a walk-off penalty to end the game. Me and Chris overjoyed. James Storm cussing at his booth, driving away all the customers.
Yeah.
Chris is like, we got to sell merch here.
I used to talk to those guys about tag team wrestling for hours and hours in the lobby, man. It was and that was the COVID era. So you just had your peers, and just getting to chat with them about psychology of tag team wrestling and just the business in general is a part of the things that I got to pick up there, which makes all of my time worth it there at Impact.
I'm so happy to see Chris Harris more involved. Front facing.
Have you seen him? He looks great too.
He wrestled a few weeks ago at Impact 1000. I think they should do a nostalgia show every single year for Impact.
I agree.
Because I know for a while there was the LOL TNA thing. Now people romanticize it. Now people remember the good times. 2005 to 2009, that's where my ass was parked. I was watching that before anything.
I loved those. What are they? Wednesday nights. You would have to get. I remember my buddy had one of those. He had one of those chipped cards. It was like, son of a bitch, they've gotten zapped. We're not going to be able to watch it.
Now I complain when people pirate my Fightful Select stuff. I was 17, 18 years old getting the direct TV. Had to do it, man. It was
a good $9-10 every Wednesday, man. It was worth it.
It was. So before the pandemic, like I said, you were working full-time, 300 days a year. I'm sure that the pandemic in general just wiped out a whole lot of wrestling. So, I mean, at this point, are there even shows to run to where you could work 300 days a year?
Let's see, my dad, if I remember correctly, I had put my 2-week notice in on a Monday, and my dad had to have open heart surgery on a Friday. So I worked that week, and then, I was doing well, and then here come this COVID pandemic. But to be honest with you, 2020, I was all over the place. I wasn't afraid to wear a mask. I was on airplanes, and I was wrestling empty sets all over the country. I would drive if I had to. Sometimes it looked like I'm going through a Walking Dead town,
Yeah. No cars on the road, nobody in the airport.
But whenever you have no other option but to get on there, and that's the only way that you raise your family, I wanted to be a pro wrestler, but I think I just want to get my toes wet. They threw me right in the pool right there during the COVID era.
How was that? I mean, that had to be categorically different. And I've heard so many people say, oh, it's surreal to wrestle in front of no fans. Listen, there are a lot of indie wrestlers that are kind of used to wrestling in front of little to no fans. There were some of them that were telling me, they're like, I was comfortable. I wrestled in front of 6 people the week before this.
Luckily, I'm from the state that we're used to drawing short amounts of people. But no, I mean, it was an adjustment for sure. But once you got in there, man, you just get in the zone. It's like anything else. You know what you got to do and where you got to be, and you make it happen.
So now that you look at the wrestling landscape, how would you compare it to before the COVID era, especially in the indie side of things? I mean, I know Sami Callihan's doing killer stuff up in
Wrestling Revolver,
just absolutely killer stuff. You're doing great stuff here. There are a lot of companies that didn't quite survive that or don't run as frequently now.
Well, I think it scared a lot of people. It's hard to invest when you don't know the future. But we've always been one of like, let's just go after it. We know our plan of attack, and we know that we can't worry about what's coming to the outside or what's to happen or what could happen. And the best thing to do is just stay forward, stick your plan, and just move on. And I think that's what Sammy's done a great job of that. He thrived in that COVID era as well, but he has a great library of great wrestling, man, and you find it all over the place.
He put you over big time in a recent interview that I did.
Oh, really?
Yeah, said a lot of really nice things about you, and that makes me happy too when I see somebody who runs the type of company he does, and you doing very much the same thing. Yeah. And it's not like a rivalry or anything like that. There's a lot of synergy there.
I absolutely love Sami Callihan and the Wrestling Revolver. I'll never forget when I first walked into Iowa. I got to be on one of those Impact Plus.
Yeah.
That I think that's where Impact kind of like, hey, maybe we can do something with this guy. And if it wasn't for Sammy booking me in positions like that, I truly don't feel like I would have gotten the opportunity at Impact Wrestling. If I didn't get that match with John Morrison or Johnny Impact, should we say, I don't feel that, he kept putting me time after time after time that I could hang with the next level talent. And I think without Sami Callihan's blessing that I would not have had that opportunity up there.
You mentioned some of the very unfortunate things that happened to you and your family this year. Extend my condolences for the loss of your father. Unfortunately, the house fire this year, I mean, that's something, both of those things are something you can't prepare for.
Well, even worse is like, we found that my father had a mini stroke in early February. He was fine. And then they had found some brain activity that wasn't right. So then they did the scan, of course. They found 2 spots. And then they got the results. This was on a Tuesday that we went and got the results, man. Yeah. And the damnedest thing is he sat there probably 5 minutes before the nurse or doctor came in. It was like, I hope we called it quick enough to beat it. And then it wasn't 5 minutes later that the nurse or the doctor said, Mr. Jones, I hate to tell you, but you're stage 4 terminal. And, he crackled for about 45 seconds. And he said, well, I've done my job of raising my children. I've been a good husband, and I know that I've done the best that I can do. And he's solid as a rock. And it wasn't 4 days later on a Saturday, I'm in West Virginia, and I get a call that my house is on fire. So I found on Tuesday my dad's going to die. And then on Saturday, I lose everything in the house fire. So it's been a rough 23, but man, I see the corner. I see the light. So, just got to get through it.
And I will say he did do a great job raising you.
Oh yeah, thank you.
You're never going to hear anybody say a bad thing about Larry D.
I hope not. I mean,
happy.
you asked the right promoter in Kentucky, you might after a while.
Oh,
but
really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
We can get into that if you want. We can get into that if you want.
I've always been different. I've always been against the grain a little bit. So I'm not one to like fall down to what it should be.
So what's next for Larry D? I mean, obviously November 4th against Moose. That's a hell of a match to have ended up with.
I hope that we have a great match, and I hope that I make it through. But I feel like they're going to have a great event on Saturday, March the 4th over in Cynthiana. We have Alex Zane's going to be there. I mean, just it's
Alex.
Crazy, man. And the next step is to be. I like getting into agenting. I love seeing.
I wanted to ask about that because that's something like, man, I see Steve Macklin working Revolver. I'm like, that's a guy who's going to be agenting. Sammy Callahan's going to be involved in the backstage forever. And then another person I always mention is Larry D. Larry D should be involved.
I've said that for years. Like, I love being in the ring. I absolutely adore it. But I really enjoy helping in the back. I really enjoy helping get their matches together. I really enjoy saying, I don't know if I would do that there, but I really feel like I'm a people person. I'm kind and friendly to everyone that I come across, and I genuinely want the best out of everybody wherever I'm at. So, Billy, Scott, hey, I'm going to be available here if you need a backstage agent.
So does that like help satisfy your competitive urges? When I did MMA, I was like, man, I love to compete. Then I started to wrestle, and I was like, oh, this satisfies an awful lot of that.
Of course.
Then when I got into the line of work I was now, I was like, oh, I'm the best at this. This satisfies that as well. Does that end of things satisfy you creatively, competitively, like
of
wrestling?
Course. Oh yeah, man. I would absolutely. I mean, I feel just as much fulfillment sitting back getting. I know I'm going to help with this match. I'm going to help with this match, and we're going to collectively get this together. Of course, I'm all for it. Yeah. I mean, I'm content if I know that I can get a piece of paper and go into a locker room and help get some people get their matches together.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt, that'd be my dream job.
And I think there's a lot of people that don't understand the intricacies of producing and agenting. Like, for example, as we filmed this past Monday on Raw, we had Ricochet and Nakamura. They brawl backstage, and I've had everybody go, where are the producers? Well, right there where they showed Shane Helms running from that gorilla desk.
Yes.
And then he's got to approve the spots, help them come up with spots, talk to other agents, make sure that spot isn't done over and over again, then go to the truck and say, hey, guys, this is when this spot is happening. Please prepare for this. There's an awful lot that goes into that. It's not just saying, yeah, guys, do whatever you want, and then just...
That excites me, though, man. It does. That kind of stuff really gets me pumped up. It does. And my wife will tell you, too, like Max and I both, when we operate, there's a switch that hits. It's no offense, but we're down to business here. Even my wife, she's like, I'm going to get away over here.
Yes.
But we have a good time when we're out there doing it, for sure.
So what do you want to see next for what you're doing with the promotions that you're working with, specifically Generation Next?
Well, I would like to see it continue to grow. I would like to see more students come through the Legends Pro Wrestling Academy. We have our eyes on a new school. Hopefully November goes well and we get to upgrade and grow a little bit more. And, the more students, the more merrier it is, and the happier that we are to produce the best talent that can come out of this area.
Produced Alexis Littlefoot.
She's very good.
I got to listen to her talk trash all the time now. I messaged the Rep Arena account complaining about the Dave Chappelle traffic. She's why are you yelling at me on this account?
That's hilarious.
Why? She was calling me out for it, and I was like, please don't tell everybody I was a Karen.
We have Alexis Littlefoot. We also have a very, very, very good Jackie Thad, who is a young talent who is going to be extremely well. And I feel that in the years to come, you could very well see him at an Impact in NWA. Yeah. He's such a dedicated kid. He's come, Max, what was he coming 5-6 times a week there for a while? And he's got it. He's going to get there. He's really working hard.
How about this one? A guy I went to high school with, Nate Gnarly.
Nasty Nate Gnarly. He's wrestling Shane Douglas.
I know. Listen, I had no idea the guy even liked wrestling in high school.
No way.
I was the biggest wrestling geek, and we had like mutual friends. Me and him were never tight, but we had mutual friends. We'd been to each other's houses. But like I had no idea. And then a few years ago, I'm looking on Facebook. I'm like, that looks that looks a lot like Nate Jackson.
Yeah.
I'm like, my God, that is him.
And again, another one of those guys that have become a really good friend, not just a student. Yeah. He's grown into a really good friend. I have the utmost respect for him as a father.
Yes.
You know, if you know anything about Nate personally, you would know every obstacle that he's went through. And at the end of the day, it's all about Addie. And I can't, you know, it's raises my heart just to see the father that he is, man.
Works his ass off.
Yes,
too.
He does.
Like I've not had the opportunity to speak with him personally and go see him in person much, but I see his work and I keep up with his work. And I love seeing that, especially from the small town that he and I came from. School of like 700.
Oh, wow.
And I just love seeing that. And that's one of the things that not only have you done, you're looking to do more of, and I really respect that.
Absolutely. I mean, teaching wrestling is just so to heart for us because we put so much into it. And again, we don't take 2 or 3 weeks to train wrestlers like the norm around in the area. But I mean, we take time and dedication and you know, I'm not saying it because he's here watching, but you know, when my father developed cancer, man, I had to be away for a long time, and I'm starting now to get back into the swing of things. As you could imagine, you know, it's been tough. But Max has been there through and through, and on record, you know, thank you. I appreciate you for that, man. I don't think I could trust anyone else to take care of things while I was away. And we got a really good thing that we collectively are worked on together. And I'm just happy to share it with everyone on November the 4th.
I'm excited too. I can tell you from personal experience, there are some places, I'll say in the Kentucky region, about 10 years ago, before I trained for pro wrestling, I was doing catch wrestling. And we invited some of the class there. And I was like, oh, you know, we're thinking about going to so-and-so. And they're like, don't. We're 9 weeks in, and you're doing everything that we're doing right now. Go somewhere else. And I was like, damn, that doesn't speak too highly.
Right.
I don't hear that about.
We're big on like psychology and understanding like what to do, what not to do. But most importantly, you have to make money at professional wrestling.
Yes, that's the goal.
And, you know, we teach our kids to understand business side of it. We teach them how to sell merchandise. We teach them how not to be taken advantage of. You know, some people might get mad at it, but some of the promoters will reach out to us in hopes that they're going to get a free hand for experience. Yeah. And, you know, our students are well trained enough that they can talk their own business now, and that's leaps and bounds ahead of some of the people that unfortunately been in about a decade or so.
So as we wrap up, tell the people where they can find you, where they can support you, where they can check out the show November 4th in Cynthiana.
You can check out the show at the Cynthiana City Hall Gym Saturday, November the 4th. Now, we have a Wrestle Summit. You can come. Okay. It's our very first wrestling convention, and it's growing. Yeah. Everyone's going to be there. It's a big personal meet and greet. That's from 10 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. And then that night, we have the wrestling show. Gates open at 6 o'clock. Bell time's at 7. And then we're going to rock and roll. We got my first annual Robert Jones annual Battle Royal.
Nice.
And it's the Gen X Rumble, actually. And there's 20-plus men in there. And they get a title shot at the end of the day. And I'm excited for it, man. I can't tell you. I get so overwhelmed when I think about, like, what we've done and how far we've come.
Hell yeah.
And, you know, from putting a little sheet up in the doorway to where we're at now. You can find me at Larry Jones on Facebook. Send me a message personally. It's me that responds. Find us over at Generation Next Pro Wrestling on Facebook. Find us on Twitter the same way. If you're interested in becoming a professional wrestler, come see us. Search Legends Pro Wrestling Academy online. Personally, reach out to myself, Max Sled. If anybody wants any podcasts or whatnot, reach me at booklarryd.com. At gmail.com. I'm sorry.
I want to say sincerely thank you. Thank Max for what you've done for Kentucky wrestling, because there were some not so hot times here in Kentucky.
We've lived through them, baby. We've lived through them.
And what you all have done and continue to do means an awful lot to me personally. So thank you all so much. Check this out, guys. He's going to whip Moose's ass. Then what he's going to do is pull Moose's custom shoes off of his feet and gift them to me.
That's it.
That's what he's going to do. Me and Moose have the same shoe guy, but I want his shoes. They won't fit me. I'll walk around looking like a clown.
He's massive.
He's enormous.
Absolutely massive. But it's gonna be fun. We'll get down.
And then Larry D's going to look him in the face, and he's like, Sean Ross Sapp has a higher vertical leap than you. And Moose is going to go, yes, sir.
I want to absolutely say that when I stand over top of him.
You need to do that. Guys, until next time, we're out.